evening. Good evening, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. My name is Philip Balson. I'm a junior at the college studying history and a member of the JFK Jr. Forum Committee here at the Institute of Politics. Before we begin, please note the exit doors on both the park side and the JFK Street side of the forum. In the event of an emergency, please proceed to the exit nearest to you and congregate in the JFK Park. Please also take a moment now to silence your cell phones. You can join the conversation tonight online by tweeting with the hashtag Durbin Forum, which is also listed in your program. Please take your seats now and join me in welcoming the acting director of the IOP, Congressman Bill Delahunt.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum. I am Bill Delahunt, and I am the acting director of the Institute of Politics. And before we begin tonight's program, I would like to remind all that that freedom of speech and civil discourse are bedrock principles of the JFK Forum and the Harvard community. So we have a protocol to enforce those principles, and let me state them. While we understand there are differences of opinion, we ask that you respect our speaker's right to free speech, as well as the rights of the audience members to listen to tonight's speakers. Anyone who disrupts the event will be asked to leave and will be escorted from the venue by the Harvard University Police. And you will have the opportunity to ask unfiltered questions of our speaker after his remarks, so please hold your comments and questions until that time. Now, we are extremely fortunate to be able to host this important and timely conversation with a remarkable American, Senator Dick Durbin. And we are also honored to have Harvard's president, Drew Faust, to open the program and to introduce Dick Durbin. Please join me in welcoming both of them to the stage.
Good evening. I'm very delighted to be here to introduce a special visitor to the JFK Forum and to have the opportunity to say a few words about a remarkable public servant. Now, in his fourth term in the United States Senate, he has served as both majority and minority whip. He's been hailed as the best debater in the Senate. I see there's another senator here, so maybe that's dangerous that I've said that. He has worked to combat AIDS in Africa, to regulate tobacco, to protect the environment, to assist Syrian refugees, to support the National Institutes of Health, and to advance scientific research. But I especially wanted to introduce him tonight so I could publicly thank him for his devotion to a cause that is so important to us here at Harvard and to our nation. And that is the protection of the Dreamers. And the creation of a path for them towards citizenship. The very phrase itself, Dreamers, comes from an act for which he was an original sponsor in 2001. He has been fighting for this cause for that length of time. He is a national champion, and he's also been a champion for individual Harvard students. I first met him 8 years ago when I went to his office to thank him, and I went together with a Harvard student, Eric Balderas, from the class of 13. He was an undocumented student who had been seized when he was in Texas visiting his family. He'd been seized when he was getting on an airplane by ICE, and it was Senator Durbin and his efforts that secured Eric's release. And we had gone together to thank him for that. In 2015, Senator Durbin worked to restore DACA status to another one of our students, Dario Guerrero, class of 15, who had lost his status when he went to visit his dying mother in Mexico. I think this is a reminder to us all that politics are ultimately about individual lives. Last week, another reminder struck me very powerfully when 4 of our medical students who depend on DACA, Dalia Larios, Blanca Morales, Alma Oñate, and Anthony Tucker Bartley, published a piece pleading for the opportunity to make the contributions to relieving human suffering for which they have been trained as aspiring physicians. So we have Eric and Dario and Blanca and Alma and Anthony, and these are only 6 names out of the hundreds of thousands that Senator Durbin champions every day. So it is my great privilege to welcome Senator Dick Durbin to Harvard and to thank him for all he has done for our students, for our community, and our nation. I give you Senator Durbin.
Thank you. Thanks, President Faust, for those kind remarks. I want to thank the acting director of the Kennedy School, the Institute of Politics, my old friend, my colleague, and actually my roommate in a row house on Capitol Hill for a number of years, Bill Delahunt. Thanks for inviting me. I want to acknowledge my colleague, Angus King, an independent, one of them I really love, from the state of Maine, who's here with his wife, Mary, and our dear friend, Ann Roosevelt. Ann, thank you so much. She has carried on the family name in a grand tradition, and thank you for all of that. Arthur Schlesinger Jr. was one of the great American public intellectuals of the 20th century. I read a story about him once. His father, well-educated himself, decided to send his son to the public schools of Boston. His son came back from an early class and reported to his father that he'd been taught by the teacher that albinos come from Albania. At which point, his father removed him and took him to a different school. But eventually, he found his way to Harvard College and graduated at age 20. He was an associate professor of history by the time he was 30. In January of 1961, President John Kennedy was assembling his team of the best and brightest. He asked Arthur Schlesinger to come work in the White House. Schlesinger said, "I'm not sure what I would bring to the job as special assistant, but if you think I can help, I'll come along." JFK replied, "Well, I'm not sure what I'll be doing as president, but I'm sure there'll be enough to keep us busy, both of us busy." History shows that both men grew wiser quickly in the White House, and America's democracy and our standing in the world were both enlarged by President Kennedy's 1,000 days. Every new president comes into office not knowing exactly what the job will demand of them. Even so, I'm troubled how little President Trump still seems to understand about his job as president. I'm also confounded, usually daily, about how little the president seems to know or care about the basic values of the American democracy and the true sources of our greatness. So I want to speak briefly about 5 basic truths about America that President Trump and many around him seem not to understand, or worse, seem to be deliberately undermining. Number 1, President Trump doesn't seem to understand the concept of separation of powers. Remember how he was stunned to learn a year ago that a federal judge could issue an injunction against his Muslim travel ban? Number 2, the president either does not understand or refuses to acknowledge that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election. 14 intelligence agencies found it. He has yet to acknowledge it. Russian cyber attacks are continuing against our democracy and other Western democracies, and these attacks constitute a grave and growing threat. Just this week, a Putin-favored candidate won a close race for president of the Czech Republic. An onslaught of likely Russian interference may have tipped the vote in his favor. At the State of the Union address, Senator King and I sat there and listened as he delivered a 1-hour, 20-minute address and said the word Russia one time. They are a direct threat against the United States and the integrity of our democracy. The president didn't make it part of his speech. Number 3, the president and many around him don't seem to understand the value of diplomacy and partnership. American global leadership is being challenged aggressively by Russia and China. Yet instead of strengthening the State Department, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has spent the last year dismantling it. The administration has failed to even nominate candidates for dozens of critical positions at the State Department. After 1 year, the United States has no ambassadors to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, or the European Union. Even worse, we have no ambassador to South Korea. President Trump and North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un taunt each other on Twitter with threats of nuclear annihilation, and the United States of America has no ambassador in Seoul. Our world today is convulsed by the largest refugee crisis since World War II. 65 million people have been driven from their homes by conflict, famine, drought, and catastrophes. The root cause of these? Climate change. The horrific war in Syria started with protests over rising food prices driven by years of drought. The heartbreaking, destabilizing flow of migrants into Europe was partly a result of the drought there and in northern and western Africa. The Pentagon, and there aren't a lot of bleeding hearts in that group, warned that climate change is one of the greatest threats to U.S. security and global stability. Yet this administration will not lead on climate change, and it won't even follow. The United States is now the only nation on earth that refuses to support the Paris Climate Agreement. The Republican Party of the United States of America, I've said this on the floor several times, hoping they'll come and challenge me. The Republican Party of the United States of America is the only major political party in the world today that denies climate change. While some states and many U.S. companies and investors are working on their own to come up with climate change solutions, the Trump administration's refusal to remain in the Paris Agreement is disastrous. It has angered our allies, damaged our moral and political standing in the world, and undermined America's ability to compete against China and other nations for the green energy jobs of the future. The fourth basic truth that President Trump and many around him fail to understand is the power of America's moral leadership. De Tocqueville recognized this fact more than 200 years ago. America is great, he wrote, because America is good. Sadly, we hear almost nothing from this administration about respect for human rights, the rule of law, or democratic norms at fair elections, or the freedom of press. This seeming indifference to human rights and values sends a message to despots around the world that they can do as they please, and the United States will not object. Fifth, the American firsters seem not to understand and that America was not built by the titans of industry alone. America was built by the love and labor of immigrants, refugees, Native Americans, and some who were brought to America in chains. People who traveled thousands of miles across the oceans through dangerous conditions to find work are not lazy benefit scroungers. They're the backbone of this country. Remaining true to our heritage as a nation of immigrants is personal. My mother's family moved to America from Lithuania when my mother was 2 years old. Her family came to this country with little money, few possessions. My grandparents didn't speak English when they arrived here, but they were determined to make a better life. Their destination in this land of opportunity was my hometown of East St. Louis, Illinois. Not exactly the first choice of many families, but for them it was the right choice because they had steel mills and slaughterhouses and railroads and opportunities for good, hard manual labor to result in a decent life and a future for your kids. Neither of my parents went to school beyond the 8th grade, but all 3 of their sons went to college. 2001, my office received a call. There was a young woman in Chicago named Teresa Lee. Teresa was Korean. She'd been brought to the United States when she was 2 years old. And she was raised in a pretty tough family. They didn't have much. Her father was a minister hoping to open a church, which he never did. Her mother, in desperation, went to work at a dry cleaners in Chicago, and the majority of dry cleaners in Chicago are run by Koreans. And she went to public schools and became part of something called the Merit Music Program. I see my friend Sunil Puri here, another immigrant to America and a son of Illinois. Glad you're here, Sunil. But she was recognized for her musical talent. They thought someday she could be a concert pianist. She was accepted at Juilliard in the Manhattan Conservatory of Music. Then when she went to fill out the application forms so that she could qualify, she came to that question about citizenship, nationality. She didn't know what to put, and neither did her mother, so they said, what are we going to do? And they said, let's call Durbin. So they called our office, and we found out the grim reality that is still the law in America. Teresa Lee, under the laws of the United States of America, the circumstances I described, is required to leave the United States for 10 years and petition to come back in as a legal citizen. It didn't make sense, and it certainly wasn't fair and just. So I introduced the DREAM Act in 2001 to make sure that Teresa would have her chance and others just like her. I often forget to tell the ending of this story, and I want to tell the ending of the Teresa Lee story. 2 families in Chicago took pity on her and paid for her education at the Manhattan Conservatory of Music. She played piano in Carnegie Hall. She now has a PhD in music and 2 lovely kids. Her husband, a jazz musician himself, as a citizen, gave her a chance to become legal in America. But she has enhanced this country with her great talent. When I was a member of the Senate and a fellow by the name of Barack Obama was my colleague, I had an opportunity to ask him to help. He co-sponsored the DREAM Act with me. And then he moved on to another job. And I called him one day and said, can you do something for these dreamers? He said, I don't know. I'll look into it. Dick Lugar, Republican of Indiana, joined me in that letter asking for the president to do something. A year later, the president came up with the DACA program, Deferred Arrival of Children's Act, and it gave them a chance to sign up and qualify for protection from deportation and the right to work for 2 years renewable. Ultimately, 780,000 young people passed the criminal background check and ended up in that position. Every member of Congress is invited to bring a guest to the State of the Union address. My guest 2 nights ago was one of the 800,000 dreamers with DACA protection. His name is Cesar Montalongo. Cesar's family brought him to America when he was 10 years old. His father had abandoned their family in Mexico. His mother took them across the border to Las Cruces, and 3 families lived in one trailer as he grew up. They struggled. He went off to college eventually, receiving no federal assistance because he's undocumented, and got a succession of degrees from Arizona and Arizona State University. And then came the opportunity for DACA, and he signed up, successfully signed up to be protected. At the same time, a great university in a city I'm honored to represent, Loyola University, decided to open up competition in their medical school to DACA-protected young people. As a result of that, the word spread around the country in a hurry. These undocumented people, now protected by DACA, had a chance to apply for medical school at Loyola. The net result, there are currently 32 DACA students in the medical school. And I know there's some right here at Harvard University, because I just met several of them. Cesar Montalongo was one of them. But he didn't just want to graduate medical school. He's in a combined MD, PhD program right now. I asked him about his PhD. He said it was in microbiology, and of course we chatted for a long time about that subject. When he finally graduates, and I hope he will, he'll receive a medical degree and a doctorate in science. But if DACA is eliminated, that may be the end of his medical career. Because you all know it takes a clinical experience and a residency to finally become a doctor. That's a job. That's employment. And if you're going to legally have that job, you need permission as an undocumented person. DACA gave that authority. If DACA is eliminated without replacement on March 5th, Cesar and many others will not be able to realize their dream. I've gone to the floor of the Senate, and I'm sure Angus has heard a couple times, with color photos and told stories of dreamers. 108 times, as a matter of fact. Cesar was one of them. And by the way, as the president noted, some of them were students at your college. Now those Harvard graduates and all the DACA recipients are in danger of being deported. Why? Because President Trump terminated DACA on September the 5th, 2017. At the time, he gave Congress 6 months to pass a law to replace it. That 6-month reprieve ends on March 5th. As of today, we haven't done it. 122 young people every single day stand to lose their DACA protections. If a new law protecting Dreamers isn't passed by Congress and signed by the President by March 5th, 1,000 DACA recipients will lose their status every day, lose their protection, be subject to deportation, and unable to legally work in this country. All told, nearly 300,000 people will lose their protections from DACA this year, and more than 300,000 in the next year. This isn't what Americans want. More than 75% of Americans support the DREAM Act. That includes more than 60% of the people who voted for President Trump. My first co-sponsor of the DREAM Act back in 2001 was a conservative Republican, Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah. In fact, when I introduced the bill, Ted Strickland knows because he served in Congress, I quickly got a phone call from Orrin Hatch who said, "What are you doing stealing my idea?" And I said, "Your idea?" "Yes, this was my idea, to protect these young people." It was a Republican majority at the time, and I said, "Orrin, you're the lead sponsor. I'm just going to co-sponsor with you. Maybe that'll give us a chance to pass it." Well, he did support it for a while. He has been kind of wayward and errant for a long time. I hope we get him back in the fold. My main co-sponsor of the DREAM Act in this Congress is another conservative Republican, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. And I thank him publicly over and over again for his courage in joining me in this effort. 3 weeks ago, Lindsey and I were at a meeting at the White House with President Trump on January 9th, with about 24 other members of Congress. There were people who support DACA and people who hate it like the devil hates holy water. The president told all of us that he wanted to protect the DACA recipients, and he would sign any bipartisan bill that Congress sent him. At the end of the meeting, President Trump, whom I'd only spoken to 4 times in my life, turned to me and said, "Call me." Really? I remembered that, and then we went back to work. We went back to Capitol Hill. Lindsey and I sat down with 4 other senators, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. All 6 of us sat down and said, "Let's hammer it out." The president has said if we send him a bill, he'll support it. We did it. And in a matter of 24 hours, closed the deal that we've been working on for months. So I decided to try the president's invitation and actually call the White House. And I said to my staff, "See if you can get the president on the phone." He called back 10 minutes later and said he's on the phone. Oh, okay. So I said, "Mr. President, you challenged us to come up with a bipartisan bill that hit the 4 elements that you raised in our meeting. We've done it. We want to present it to you." "Good," he says. "I want to hear more about it, and I don't want to slow walk this. I want this to move quickly." And I said, "Thank you. We do too. There's a lot at stake here." I said, "Lindsey Graham's coming to the White House, and he's going to sit down and explain the details to you." He said, "I'll call you in the midst of that conversation, and we can talk about it." Great. Couldn't have been better. 10 minutes later, called back and said, "No, you come with Lindsey Graham to make this presentation." So Lindsey and I called at 10, and at 12 o'clock, we're headed to the Oval Office to meet with the president. Well, we're kind of walking on clouds here, thinking this is moving nicely. January the 11th, so quickly. Well, we got to the White House, we were in the waiting room, and then we noticed there were others coming for the meeting. 5 members of Congress, 2 senators, and 3 House members, all of whom opposed DACA, the Dreamers, and immigration reform. What we thought was going to be our presentation turned out to be a meeting that was loaded from the other side. The president's views on our plans changed radically from when I first talked to him on the phone, and you know what happened next. I'm not going to repeat the president's comments on immigration that followed in that fateful reception. After that meeting, Congress had about a week and a half to pass a stopgap spending bill to keep the government funded. The spending bills, as Angus can tell you, are known as continuing resolutions or CRs. Our bipartisan group spent that week trying to make sure the protections of DACA recipients would be included in the CR, and when they weren't, we voted to shut down the government for about 72 hours. When it came time to vote, 6 Republicans joined us in this effort not to pass the CR. As you all know, that 3-day shutdown of the government, which ended when Congress passed another CR, resulted in a promise on the floor of the Senate that we would bring this measure up for debate and consideration on a specific timetable. What Senator McConnell said twice on the floor of the Senate, and I've quoted him many times, is that if we have not reached a bipartisan agreement as of February 8th, week from tomorrow, we will then entertain on the floor on what he called a level playing field, a measure that we can offer a series of amendments to on the subject of DACA and immigration. So we are at the point now where we have a chance, but only a chance. In the days and hours ahead, I know that we need to come together and find some way to resolve this terrible dilemma which America has faced. Many of us have tried for quite a long time. By the way, I want to say a word about the people who are marching outside. I welcome them. I thank them for being here. And the reason I thank them for it is because I encouraged them to do this. I encouraged many of these DACA and Dreamers to step out and tell their stories and to become active participants in this process. I didn't know they'd be marching outside my speech, but that's okay too. In fact, it's just right for them to understand the freedoms of this country and their opportunity to be part of its future and to give other groups the same opportunity to speak up in a nonviolent, peaceful way and express themselves. Let me close. Let me tell you, in closing, a terrible decision I made, and I've regretted it for 50 years. I was a student at Georgetown during the Civil Rights Movement, and I knew what was going on across America, and then we heard about a march in Selma, Alabama. And several of us as students thought, we're going down there. We're going to drive on down there and be part of that march. I couldn't get out of my job, and I couldn't go down there, and I've regretted it ever since. That civil rights struggle for many of us was kind of an eye-opener about opportunity in America and the fact that every generation is challenged to create new opportunities to be part of this country and part of its future, whether it's women with the right to vote, whether it's the racial struggle that we went through in the 60s, whether it's the rights of those who are disabled, or whether it's the rights of those who immigrate to this country. It is part of that same civil rights struggle. We've certainly not solved the challenges of the 60s when it comes to racial justice. There's much more that we need to do. But I believe this issue of immigration is the civil rights issue of our time as well. We need to be able to speak up as Americans about what immigration means to this country. The fact that we've come from every corner of this earth to be part of the United States of America. And the people who came are special people. I think back on my grandparents sitting down in Jurbarkas, Lithuania, and deciding to give up their home, their church, their relatives, the dog and the cat and all the chickens, and leave to come to a country where they didn't speak the language. That's my story. That's my family's story. But that's America's story. They bring something special, not just the fact they survived the journey, but they came here with such damn determination to make a life for themselves and make this a better place. I think that's what's behind this great country, and always has been. And for those who ignore this, for the Steve Millers and Jeff Sessions and all the others, they're preaching a gospel about immigration which doesn't reflect who we are or what we can be. Now's our time to speak up. I left a group of dreamers downstairs, DACA eligible folks. They said over and over again, don't forget our parents, and I haven't. I told them what I'll tell you. I would have been willing to break any law, to violate any custom, to save my children, to give them a chance, and their parents made that decision too. And as we speak about their story, I want to make sure that their parents have the same chance that all of us have had to be part of America's future. There are many things you can do, but I believe in the power of personal action. Here's a story I want to share with you. Jose Ruben Mendoza was born in Cuba and moved to Mexico. In 1991, he and his young wife came to America, to New Jersey, and he had $23 in his pocket. He found work driving a delivery truck with a partner who spoke no Spanish. Jose Rubin spoke almost no English, but they became good friends. After years of scrimping and saving, Jose was able to open his own small business, a graphic design firm. In 2004, he started studying for his American citizenship exam. His daughter Maria used flashcards to drill him on all the 100 questions on the exam. I wonder how many of us could pass that exam. Jose Rubin knew every answer, but he always was stumped with one. For some reason, he could never remember the name of the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. When the day finally came for Jose Rubin to take his citizenship exam, he aced it, a perfect score. Afterwards, he told the man who administered the test, "You didn't ask me the question, but the Chief Justice of the United States is Rehnquist." The day that he became an American citizen was one of the proudest days of Jose Rubin Mendoza's life. Another one of his proudest days was the day his daughter Maria was accepted here at Harvard. In May 2019, Maria Mendoza will become the first person in her family to graduate from college. She wants to go to law school, but she isn't waiting for her degree to make a difference. She's already interned for 2 members of Congress. She's also a volunteer tutor with the Institute of Politics Citizenship Tutoring Program to help immigrant employees of Harvard prepare for their citizenship exam. She's been paired with Marilyn Mejia, who moved to America from the Dominican Republic and cleans the business school here at night. Maria was with Marilyn last year when Marilyn passed her citizenship exam. She was with her 2 months ago when Marilyn became a United States citizen. Maria's here tonight. Would you please stand? This is what democracy looks like. This is what America looks like. I'm sure Maria's dad has great judgment, but he made a very tough political decision. He ran for the school board in West New York, New Jersey. I can't imagine serving on a school board. I think it's the toughest assignment in politics. How's that for the American dream? And let me just close before I open it to questions and say this. These are challenging times for those of us who believe that a government can be a force for good and that America is and must remain a nation of immigrants. Do not get discouraged. Don't give up. For those of you who are blessed with citizenship and protection, become a dreamer. Stand in line with these young people on behalf of not only their future, but the future of their families. That's what's important. Let me thank Harvard Kennedy School for inviting me, and let me answer some questions.
I'm going to leave the senator at the podium, but just some ground rules. We have a lot of rules here at the IOP. There are 4 microphones, 2 on the floor and 2 in the boxes. Please introduce yourself briefly and ask 1 concise question. And questions, remember, end with a question mark, okay? Dick Durbin.
Take it away. Would you please introduce yourself? I'm right? Okay, sorry.
Usually it's there.
Okay, thank you.
Usually I sneak up there.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Chala Alemo. And first of all, thank you, Harvard. This is a wonderful opportunity to meet such important people. By the way, last night I saw a dream you becoming the president. I hope it will happen.
I hope so. That's a great dream.
And anyway, first of all, I want to thank you that you have been so vocal about the people that has some immigration problem and every Americans who are facing life every single day. And I am also honored to appreciate you being a vocal about the Donald Trump's comment on Africa situation. And I know the media did a good job in bringing it up, and you have been so vocal about it. And we heard you spoke against it, you exposed it. Thank you so much. And sometimes I am kind of puzzled when the media is so sensational about content, countries and continent instead of the people's life. I am an Oromo, the indigenous people of Oromo land, country currently called Ethiopia. You know the genocide is happening. I lost 2 uncles. I lost my family members. I am the survivor of that genocide. I want to thank you. You have sponsored the bill, House Resolution 128 and Senate Resolution 168, which is still stuck in Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan's office, not to bring into the House and Senate to vote on it, to respect human rights for the Tigray government, the minority 5 million of the 100 million, committing genocide against my nation by using money from the United States. And I'm not surprised about the president. You know more than me about this. And now we have a leader whose name is Professor Bakala Garba, who's a university professor in Ethiopia. He is now in jail. He needs medical attention. He's prevented from getting medical attention. The minority government want him to die in jail. As a senator, what would you promise me when you go back to Washington, D.C. tomorrow to call Ambassador Michael Roner of Addis Ababa U.S. Embassy in Ethiopia to put pressure on the Tigray government to help him get medical attention?
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. I was looking for Molly. Molly, are you here? This right around the corner there is a member of my staff, Molly. And if you would please give her your name and address, and I want to make sure I understand this political prisoner's name, and I promise you that I will look into it and do what I can to help you.
Thank you so
and
much.
help your cause. Let me just say this quickly, because it's worth saying. We now face, as I said, the largest refugee crisis in modern history. Refugees in every direction. I was in Myanmar just 6 weeks ago to meet with the people of Myanmar and ask them to please explain to me what was happening to the Rohingya people. I went with one of the UN workers there, and I said to him, why is it whenever I say the word Rohingya in Myanmar, they stop me and say, they don't exist. There are no Rohingya people. They won't let you say the word. And there are hundreds of thousands of Rohingya people who were in Myanmar. 600,000 of them have been dispossessed over into Bangladesh. That is part of the refugee crisis going on in the world. Now, the United States cannot single-handedly take care of the refugee crisis in the world, but we learned a bitter lesson in the 1930s when we turned away the SS St. Louis, when 900 Jews were trying to escape Nazi Germany, and we turned them away from the United States and sent them back to Europe. 200 of them died in the Holocaust because we would not let them come to the U.S. In the United States Senate, as Angus probably knows, there was an effort made by Senator Wagner of New York to allow the children, Jewish children, to come to the United States. 10,000 of them defeated in the United States Senate. A shameful chapter in our history, and one that I hope we never repeat. But when it was over, we said it'll be different from this point forward. We began to lead the world in assimilating and accepting refugees. We can never reach the status of Jordan today, which has more than half their population of refugees. But we had that reputation of standing up and accepting 100,000 refugees each year, and many times more, from Vietnam, from Soviet Jewry, all these different groups, the Cubans, all who came to our country. Now this administration proposes we cut that in half, 50,000. In one of the worst periods in world history, the United States is going to close its doors to refugees who are carefully screened before they can come here, and sometimes wait years for the opportunity. Whether it's in Ethiopia, whether it's in Myanmar, whatever it may be, I believe the United States is a much better nation than that, and I'll be glad to try to help you in that. Yes.
Hi, my name is Andrew Kingsbury. I'm an extension school student, and I'm also a writer at a startup called Quibble. And on Quibble, we ask questions about politics, entertainment, sports, and you make predictions. So I'm going to ask you to make a Quibble prediction, sir.
Patriots by 14.
No. I work for the politics team, but anyways. So Will there be a government shutdown in a couple of weeks? That's my quibble question to you. Quibble.me, quibble with no e.me. But anyways, little plug.
I don't believe so. But we don't know what the Republicans will propose in their continuing resolution. We count on Senator McConnell to keep his word to bring this matter to the floor. And Angus is part of something that's emerged in the Senate, which I've never seen before. It is the centrist and moderates in both the Republican and Democratic caucuses who are meeting now. How many get together, Angus?
We started with 12, it's now about 30.
30. Not a bad number in the Senate. And they are trying to make sure this never happens so that we come up with a bill, a bipartisan bill that can pass on the floor of the United States Senate and avoid that confrontation. This particular issue is like the key to the lock. Once we get this issue resolved, a lot of other things will quickly follow, I believe. So I have great hope in what Angus is part of. Susan Collins, his colleague in Maine, is also a leader in this. So I think this could result in the passage of a CR and a good bill relating to this issue.
Thanks for quibbling.
Me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Sayed Kumal Ali. And first and foremost, I want to appreciate the fact that Senator Dick Durbin is here tonight at Harvard. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And I'm not going to give you my life story, because there's thousands, there's millions like me. But my father is from Pakistan. He came to this country for a better future. Everyone's heard this story. This is very inspirational tonight. Fellow brother from Ethiopia, fellow brothers from Mexico, fellow sisters from around the world. But at the end of the day, I cannot live in a country where my president is telling me that I don't belong here. I run a political advocacy organization called Lincoln Fellows. But I'm not here to tell you about Lincoln Fellows. Who could care less about me or who I am? It's the thousands of people who don't have Harvard, who don't have prestigious institutions, who don't have a president like Drew Faust. I'm blessed to be here. I transferred from a community college at this institution. I say my blessings every time I walk through this door, because I can meet individuals like you who've made a change. But it hurts me when all we do is talk about inspiration, but then at the end of the day, we're all going to leave. We're going to post this on Instagram, and we're going to leave. That's my question. That's it. How can we continue to keep making a change?
Well, you have to participate in this process. In a democracy, it comes down to votes. And it comes down to people who show up to vote. In the city of Chicago, which I'm honored to represent, currently the public school system has a majority of Hispanic students. If you go to the predominant Hispanic wards of 60,000 people, you're lucky to find 10,000 voting in an election. Some of them can't, but many can and don't. So if we are going to really move forward with the right values in America, then those of us who believe in them have to participate. We've got to be part of the process. It is not going to happen overnight. It happens through the electoral process and through elections. I believe that what we're speaking about tonight is the dominant majority belief in America. And if we are going to make sure that it is shown in the membership in the House of Representatives and the Senate, we have to mobilize people like we never have before. In December, in frustration, a year ago, in frustration, a group started arising called Indivisible. They're all over. You've heard of them? I'm sure you have. They're all over Illinois. And I went to some of their meetings, and I'd never seen these people before. They were so angry about the results of the election that they want to be part of change. And already I'm seeing a new lifeblood in our effort, in the progressive effort. So don't give up. I really believe that if we participate and all pitch in, we can make that difference.
May I just say, because I have class in like 10 minutes. If you genuinely care, your parents were, where were your parents from?
Lithuania, my mother.
Lithuania. If you're still that person, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. I don't. I see you as an individual. If you're still that person, hey, come to my meetings at lincolnfellows.org. Love you.
Thank you, Ali. I think this gentleman over here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi. Hi, my name is Ruben. I'm a junior at the college, and I'm part of the Harvard College Democrats. You mentioned the parents of DACA eligible individuals, but if Donald Trump gets what he wants on the issue of family reunification, we know that these families will be torn apart. And further than that, families of American citizens whose parents are undocumented would be torn apart. And I think I faced a lot of frustration with the Democratic Party the past couple of months because it seems we're compromising on a lot of things. And I think I was wondering if you could here publicly address your perspective on the issue, particularly of family reunification, and if you can make a promise that we won't throw millions of people under the bus for the sake of a select few.
Well, let me address that because it was an important issue downstairs, and there's some Dreamers DACA eligible who were there and are here as well. It is a sensitive, personal, emotional issue about the plight of their parents. And when I sponsored comprehensive immigration reform, we had a process that gave 11 million people in this country, the undocumented, a path to legalization and citizenship. That is what I'm for. I cannot get that through a Republican-controlled House or Senate and with this president. It's not going to happen. And we can't control how many he will deport while he is president of the United States. We are not going to make it easier for him by any means, but he has the means now, and he's already shown it, to deport many people who are totally innocent. You've seen the stories, haven't you? People who've been here for 29 years have never had a parking ticket, are being deported and families split up. Don't tell me that makes America safer. I don't believe that for a second. But we cannot give up on the goal of this comprehensive immigration reform, and I'll do everything I can to give these parents a fighting chance. Yes. Hello again.
Hello again, Senator. My name is Laura. I am a sophomore at the college, and I am here with Act on a Dream and the 11.3 million undocumented people in this country. I wrote my question down, but basically I have been undocumented for 16 years. I have had DACA for 5 years. And I can't remember a time when I didn't constantly wish for papers, like when it was 11/11, wish for papers, New Year's Eve, the 12 grapes, wish for papers. But I never imagined that, this is the closest we've ever been to a path to citizenship. But I feel nothing but anger, really. I don't feel excited. I don't feel like this is something that we should be proud of if it does pass. I know that if a DREAM Act passes, that is not a clean DREAM Act. I would feel nothing but guilt that this is what it took for me to become a US citizen, or even get a chance, because that there would be so many more laws. And if you do get a speeding ticket, or I'm not sure what it would be, but it would be a 10-year conditional permanent residency, or conditional and then permanent residency. So my question to you is, how can you justify a 10-year path to citizenship in return for $25 billion in border control and ICE funding that would only increase the deaths at the border? Because from what I see, a path to citizenship for me and for a few would mean the death of millions from these hyper-militarized borders and the continuing criminalization of our community.
I know a number of people I spoke to earlier feel exactly as you do, so I want to address this if I can. And as I explained to you downstairs, and I want to say to the audience in general, it starts with basic Senate math. 49 Democrats, 51 Republicans. Any important measure takes 60 votes. In order to pass basic DACA protection, even to extend DACA, at least 11 Republicans have to join us. Why would they join us? Some because they're good people and they believe in what we believe in. Some because there's something they want to add, and many of the things they want to add are objectionable to me. Some are just offensive, and we've got to make a choice. Angus and I do that every day. You make the choice about how can we get 80% of what we want if we give up 20%? I wish I could say we're going to pass a Clean Dream Act. I don't have the votes for a Clean Dream Act. I don't have 11 Republicans for a Clean Dream Act. And I don't know what would happen to the same measure when it reaches the House. I'm not very hopeful. But let me just say this, because I know you brought up your parents and others have as well. One of my goals is not only to make sure that those who are currently or were protected by DACA or might have fit into the DREAM Act category reach legalization, lose their fear of deportation, and have a path to citizenship so that they can be part of America. I've got another goal in mind. I want these 2 million, it could be 2 million that we're talking about, to become the driving force in this country on immigration, to stand up and speak up about what happened to you, what is happening to your family, and amplify what I consider to be the solid message America wants to hear, that immigration is right for us and injustice is intolerable. I think you will be part of that effort. I hope you will be. I know you feel badly, and many do, that they're being spared and their parents are not. We're doing everything we can to spare the parents. I am. Many of my colleagues are as well. But trust me, we've got to turn this over to the next generation who's willing to fight. And I can't think of better leaders than those who've been through this struggle.
My name's Philip. I'm a junior at the college. Thank you for being here tonight, Senator. As a proud descendant of immigrants, I favor letting the best and brightest from every single country come to our shores. In fact, I'd let more in instead of fewer, as the current proposal apparently does. But at the same time, I favor letting in more Venezuelan entrepreneurs or Nigerian doctors instead of allowing every single permanent resident to bring their adult siblings over. That's what currently happens under the program of chain migration or family reunification. Now, you have called the sort of policy that I favor offensive or even hateful in the past. It's also the exact same policy that Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is implementing in multicultural Canada. So my question to you is, do you consider me hateful? And if you do, would you say the same to the Canadian Prime Minister?
No, I'm not going to characterize you as hateful. I don't know you. And I accept your premise that you come to this in an effort to come up with a good solution. And your point of view represents the point of view of many Republicans I sit across the table from. So let me just say a few things to consider. Do I want an entrepreneur to come in from another country? Why not? If he can create jobs in America. We have such a program. It's called EB-50. There's a lot of abuse in this program. People are buying their way into America and not creating jobs. But we have a program for entrepreneurs to come here. Do we want that skilled engineer to come in this country? We have that program. It's called H-1B. They can come here for 3 years, renewable 3 years, and many of them end up becoming citizens of this country at the end of the process. I'm not against merit-based immigration, but I'm certainly not against unifying families. Those who want to see their close relatives come join them in this country and help them survive in this country and be part of it look a lot like my family that came to this country without a special set of skills. But they came here and made a life. I'll tell you this too. I'm not going to tell my whole story, it's a bore, but there are places across the United States like slaughterhouses, poultry processing houses. You pick them, Massachusetts, Illinois, Texas. Go down there and watch who comes out of the gate at the end of the day. Undocumented Hispanics and Africans, because Americans don't want to do those jobs. Are those people who are working there engineers? No, but they're the ones who are willing to take these hard and dirty jobs that immigrants always take. They're the ones who are willing to landscape the golf courses of people who don't necessarily care much for them. But I think there's a room in America for us to have a family unification. 75% of immigrants are family unification. And we have opportunities too for those of talent. Last point I'll make to you about talent in America, the comprehensive immigration reform had one provision which I thought was eminently sensible. You know what it said? It said if you get an advanced degree in a STEM subject in America, we'll hand you a green card. We want you to stay. We now find, I can't give the exact numbers, I'm sure the president can, that overwhelmingly in STEM subjects, there are foreign students who want to stay. I want to give them that chance. I'm not against talent coming to America, but I'm certainly not against unifying families either. And no, I don't think you're hateful. We just disagree.
My name is Barbara Gross. I work here at the college. There are two Harvard professors who have just come out with a book that has gotten a lot of visibility called How Democracies Die. From your vantage point, Senator Durbin, where is this country on the spectrum of a healthy democracy and a terminally ill democracy? If you could comment on that.
I think Citizens United has corrupted our political system in an unimaginable way. When we decided that corporations are persons when it comes to contributing money, we opened the door for the Koch brothers to unashamedly announce 48 hours ago they were going to put $400 million into this next campaign. This political scene is made up of two categories: those who are multimillionaires and those who are mere mortals. I fit in the second category. And I have to go out when I have a campaign and raise money in small amounts from a lot of people who would like to go to the other side of the street when they see me coming. But they're nice enough to support me. But this infusion of money, secret money, dark money, never disclosed, as well as the invasion of the Russians into their cyber attack on us, really, those two things worry me a lot about the future of this. Let me add a third. This whole notion that we can't find a media we trust, that if somebody says something that you disagree with, you brand it as fake news and dismiss it. If we can't find a common set of facts that we can agree on in America, it's tough to manage a democracy. So those are the three elements. Having said that, when I look at our friend, Bernie Sanders, who managed to come out of nowhere and with a lot of grassroots support and small contributions make a dramatic impact on the body politic in America, I believe there's hope. I believe small contributors who participate in it and people who are willing to join these groups like Indivisible and say, for the first time, I'm going to be a precinct committeeman. I'm going to vote, and I'm going to talk to my neighbors. It means that much to me. That, I think, can ultimately prevail. Okay? One more.
The gentleman over there.
Hi again, Senator. So my question actually relates to, what was your name again, man? Yeah. Okay, so I didn't hear you. But so my actual question, so we were in the meeting together. I'm one of the 11.5 million undocumented immigrants. I'm a DACA recipient. My question is actually broader. So we talk about immigration as an issue of skill. So like the gentleman over there said, we want the greatest, the most skillful, the best entrepreneurs to come to the country and whatever. So heavy, right? Who deserves to come to America? Like, what does it mean? What kind of country are we when we say that we want the best and the brightest only to come, when the vast majority of immigrants who built this country weren't particularly skilled? I think your story is a testament to that. Who is America for? Who deserves to be an immigrant in America, in your opinion?
There's a man sitting in the front row here, I introduced earlier. His name is Sunil Puri. He came from India to Rockford, Illinois. Didn't have much money in his pocket, but he went to Rockford College. And Sunil Puri has become an amazing force in that community. The economic development of Rockford owes its success to a great extent to this young man who came from India. He couldn't have passed that skill test when he came into this country, but he has brought skillful entrepreneurship to his community and made it a better place to live. That's one example. And there are many more just like it. And I believe when we start getting so selective that we're just going to pick the best and brightest to come to this country, we lose something in the process. We lose those people who are willing to bring those kids who are going to be educated to be the best and brightest and sacrifice everything in a restaurant, at a dry cleaner, whatever it is, that makes a difference in their lives. So that's my answer to your question. I want to respond to the sign upstairs because we haven't talked about it. Protect TPS recipients. There are about 350,000 temporary protected status people in the United States today. They are primarily from El Salvador, Honduras, and Haiti. That's about 250,000. Another 100,000 from Yemen, Somalia, Sudan, lots of other countries. They are allowed to come here because of some tragedy or catastrophe in their country, whether it's a natural disaster, a political disaster, something of that nature. They are supposed to stay here in a temporary status, but we have kind of looked the other way if they're not causing any trouble and let them stay for long periods of time. Now we run the risk that this administration will tell them to leave. Well, I've been down to Haiti many times. The earthquake has come and gone, thank goodness, and it's been cleaned up, but it is still one of the poorest economies on earth. It's certainly the poorest economy in the Western Hemisphere. To turn loose 50,000 Haitians, take them out of their homes and their jobs here in the United States and send them down to this impoverished country is the wrong thing for America to do. We try to address the TPS issue in the bill that Senator Graham and I put together and try to find a way to protect them so that they have a path to green cards and citizenship as well. But it's not part, I hope it is part of the final agreement, but I can't guarantee it. I want to include it. Okay? Any other questions?
I have the final question. Well, that concludes that I think was a very inspiring forum, except as moderator, I have the final question. Senator Durbin, would you consider running for president?
I hate to quote Pat Buchanan, but I think he said POWMIA. President of what, may I ask? I will tell you this, and you'll be surprised, Bill, but Loretta said, my wife, said it's all right if I run for president under one condition. She gets to pick the country. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you for a great evening. You know, in terms of the question what the country needs, it needs heart. And I think you heard heart this evening.